The uninvited guest. The crimson suns of Vaxthos cast their eternal glow across the massive orbital platform, where the greatest military ceremony in Zetharian history was about to begin. Admiral Krex Vorthak stood on the observation deck of the command station, his scaled hands clasped behind his broad back as he watched hundreds of warships arrange themselves in perfect formation. The Grand Fleet ceremony happened only once every solar cycle, and this year marked the expansion into 3 new star systems. Today was about showing strength, about proving that the Zetharian Empire remained the most powerful force in this sector of the galaxy. The ships gleamed like deadly jewels against the starfield. Massive dreadnoughts floated alongside sleek destroyers, their hulls painted in the traditional deep purple of the Zetharian military. Each vessel carried enough firepower to level a small moon, and together they represented 5 centuries of military evolution and conquest. Krex felt pride swell in his chest as he counted over 800 ships arranged in their ceremonial display. Navigator Zil Mordain approached from behind, his younger voice filled with excitement. "Admiral, the final squadrons are moving into position. The ceremony will begin in 20 minutes. Zil was barely past his military academy graduation, but he had earned his place on Krex's staff through exceptional skill and unwavering dedication to the Empire. Krex nodded, without turning around. "Good. Make sure all communication channels are clear. I want every world in our territory to witness this moment. Let them see what protects them, what expands their borders, what keeps them safe from the unknown threats that lurk in the dark spaces between stars." The unknown threats. That phrase had been used by Zetharian leaders for generations, mostly to justify military spending and expansion. In truth, the Zetharians had encountered very few species that could match their technological prowess or military organization. Most civilizations they met either joined their empire willingly or were absorbed through swift, decisive campaigns. The galaxy seemed full of weaker races who needed protection, guidance, or both. General Thane Corbus entered the observation deck, his heavy footsteps announcing his presence. Thane was older than Krex, scarred from dozens of battles, and carried the authority of someone who had never lost a war. His voice was like grinding stone when he spoke. "Admiral, the War Council is pleased with today's display. The new plasma cannons performed excellently in yesterday's tests, and our intelligence reports suggest the Outer Rim colonies are ready for peaceful integration." Krex finally turned around, his yellow eyes meeting Thane's. Peaceful integration. I like that phrase better than conquest. It sounds more civilized, more worthy of an advanced species like ourselves. The 3 officers stood together, watching, as the massive fleet completed its formations. Ships arranged themselves in complex geometric patterns that demonstrated not just military might but also the sophisticated coordination systems that made the Zetharian Empire so effective. Every captain knew exactly where to position their vessel, every gunner understood their role in the greater strategy, and every communications officer maintained perfect contact with the central command. Then, without warning, everything went silent. Not the normal kind of silence that comes before a ceremony, but the absolute terrifying silence of complete system failure. Every screen on the observation deck went dark. Every communication channel died. Even the background hum of the station's power system seemed to fade into nothing. Zil's voice cracked with confusion. "Admiral, I'm not receiving any signals from the fleet. Nothing from the communication array, nothing from the orbital scanners, nothing from anywhere." Krex moved quickly to the manual backup console, his fingers working over controls that hadn't been used in decades. "Get the emergency. Systems online. Run a full diagnostic on all primary systems. This has to be some kind of equipment malfunction." But even as he spoke, Krex felt a cold certainty settling in his stomach. Equipment failures didn't happen simultaneously across multiple redundant systems. Equipment failures didn't create this kind of absolute silence. Something else was happening, something deliberate and sophisticated beyond anything they had encountered before. Thane was already at the observation window, his experienced eyes scanning the fleet formation. "Admiral, look at the ships, look at their positioning." Krex and Zil joined him at the window, and what they saw made no sense. The entire fleet, 800 warships arranged in perfect ceremonial formation had stopped moving. Not slowed down, not changed course, but stopped completely as if frozen in space. No running lights blinked, no engines glowed, no sign of life or activity came from any vessel. "That's impossible," Zill whispered. "Ships don't just stop in space. The momentum alone should keep them drifting. And where are the emergency beacons? Every ship should have activated backup power by now." Krex was about to respond when something new appeared in the space above the fleet. It wasn't dramatic, wasn't announced by explosions or flashing lights. One moment the space was empty, and the next moment a ship was there. Not emerging from hyperspace, not decloaking, just suddenly present as if it had always been there, and they had simply failed to notice it until now. The ship was unlike anything in Zetharian databases. Where their vessels were angular and aggressive, this one was smooth and curved. Where their hulls were painted in bold colors, this one seemed to absorb light, appearing almost black against the starfield. It was smaller than most Zetharian warships, perhaps only a quarter the size of their largest dreadnoughts, but something about its presence made it seem far more significant than its dimensions suggested. "What is that?" Thane's voice carried the first note of uncertainty Krex had ever heard from the old general. Before anyone could answer, the observation deck's emergency communication system crackled to life. The voice that came through was clear, calm, and speaking in perfect Zetharian. But the accent was strange, unfamiliar, and the tone carried a confidence that made Krex's scales tighten with instinctive wariness. "Zetharian Command, this is Captain Saracen of the United Earthship Prometheus. We apologize for the interruption of your ceremony, but we need to establish communication. Please respond on this frequency." The three Zetharian officers stared at each other in stunned silence. Earth. They had heard that name before, buried in old intelligence reports about distant species that kept to themselves in the far reaches of the galaxy. Humans, if the reports were accurate, were supposed to be a young species, barely past their home system, certainly not capable of appearing undetected in the heart of Zetharian space. Krex moved to the communication console, his training overriding his confusion. "Unknown vessel. This is Admiral Krex Vorthak of the Zetharian Imperial Fleet. You have entered our territory without permission and interfered with our military operations. Identify yourself and explain your actions immediately." The response came quickly, and the voice remained perfectly calm. "Admiral Vorthak, we are representatives of humanity, and we have been observing your expansion activities with great interest. We have no hostile intentions, but we do have concerns about your planned movement into certain disputed regions. We would like to discuss this matter peacefully." Thane's hand moved instinctively to his weapon, even though they were on a space station far from any direct combat. "Observing us? For how long? How did you get past our sensors, our patrol ships, our early warning systems?" Captain Chen's voice carried what might have been amusement. "General Corbus, we have been watching your activities for quite some time. As for how we arrived undetected, perhaps that discussion can wait until we establish better diplomatic relations. Right now, we would appreciate the opportunity to speak with your leadership about mutual interests and boundaries in this sector." Krex felt his world shifting beneath his feet. The Zetharian Empire prided itself on superior technology, unmatched military organization, and complete awareness of everything happening in their territory. But here was a species they had barely heard of, appearing in their most secure space, shutting down their most advanced fleet and speaking as equals rather than supplicants or enemies. "You shut down our ships," Krex said, his voice harder now. "You interrupted our ceremony and invaded our space. These are not the actions of peaceful diplomats. Your ships are undamaged, Admiral. Your crews are safe. All systems will be restored the moment we finish our conversation. We chose this moment precisely because it was a display of military power rather than an actual military operation. No one is in danger, but everyone can see that new factors have entered the equation." Zill had been working frantically at the sensor controls, trying to get any information about the mysterious ship. Finally, he looked up with an expression of complete bewilderment. "Admiral, I can't scan them. Not can't scan them clearly, can't scan them at all. It's like they're not even there except we can see them with our own eyes. The implications hit Krex like a physical blow. A species that could appear anywhere without detection, shut down entire fleets without firing a shot, and communicate as if they held all the advantages in any negotiation. Everything the Zetharian Empire had built was based on technological and military superiority. What happened when they encountered someone who made them look primitive? Captain Chen's voice came through the speakers again, patient but firm. Admiral, we understand this is surprising. We know the Zetharians value strength and respect capability. We are demonstrating both, but we are choosing to use them for communication rather than conquest. This is what we call diplomacy, backed by strength. We hope you will see the wisdom in discussing our mutual interests rather than testing our respective military capabilities. Thane moved closer to Krex, his voice low. Admiral, we need to get word to the High Command. If these humans can do this to our main fleet, they could do it to any of our forces. We need to know what we're dealing with. Krex nodded, but he was beginning to understand that traditional military thinking might not apply to this situation. The humans had demonstrated overwhelming technological superiority, but they were using it to request conversation rather than to demand surrender. In 5 centuries of Zetharian expansion, nothing like this had ever happened. Captain Chen, Krex said finally, you have our attention. What exactly do you want to discuss? The demonstration of strength, the emergency session of the Zetharian. War Council convened in the secure chamber deep within the orbital platform, but nothing about this meeting felt secure anymore. Around the circular table sat the most powerful military leaders in the Empire, their faces reflecting the same confusion and concern that had gripped Admiral Krex since the human ship appeared. The holographic display in the center of the room showed the UES Prometheus, still hanging motionless above their frozen fleet like a dark omen against the stars. General Thane Corbus spoke first, his voice carrying the weight of centuries of military tradition. We cannot allow this humiliation to stand. 800 ships, our finest vessels, reduced to helpless targets by a single unknown craft. Every species in the galaxy will hear about this. Our authority, our reputation, everything we have built will crumble if we appear weak. Elder Vex Nalar, the oldest member of the council and the only civilian voice in the room, leaned forward on his walking staff. His ancient eyes held wisdom earned through decades of diplomatic service. General, what you call humiliation might actually be an opportunity. This Captain Chen has demonstrated power that far exceeds our own. Yet she chooses negotiation over domination. Perhaps we should ask why. Admiral Krex activated the communication link to the human ship, and Captain Chen's voice filled the chamber with the same calm confidence that had unsettled him earlier. Captain, the Zetharian War Council is assembled. We are prepared to hear your concerns about our expansion activities. Thank you, Admiral. I appreciate your willingness to discuss this matter. My tactical officer, Commander Marcus Webb, has prepared a detailed analysis of your planned expansion routes. We have particular concerns about 3 star systems that contain established colonies of other species. The holographic display shifted, showing a 3-dimensional map of local space, with Zetharian expansion routes marked in purple and 3 systems highlighted in red. Commander Webb's voice joined the conversation, crisp and professional. The Kepler 442 system contains a peaceful mining colony established by the Andorian Republic. The Wolf 359 system hosts refugee settlements from the recent conflict in the Centauri sector. The Gliese 667 system is home to a developing civilization that has just achieved interstellar communication. General Thane's scales darkened with anger. These systems were identified through our standard survey procedures. We follow all established galactic protocols for expansion. If these species wanted to maintain their claims, they should have registered them properly with the Galactic Council. Captain Chen's response carried a note of steel beneath the diplomatic tone. General, the Galactic Council has been dominated by species like yours for centuries. Smaller civilizations often cannot afford the registration fees or lack the political influence to have their claims recognized. That does not give larger empires the right to absorb them. The chamber fell silent as the implications of this statement settled over the assembled officers. The human captain was not just questioning their specific expansion plans, she was challenging the entire system that had allowed the Zetharian Empire to grow for 5 centuries. Navigator Zil Mordain, who had been granted permission to observe the council session, spoke quietly from his position near the wall. Captain Chen, our intelligence files contain very little information about humanity. How long have you been monitoring our activities, and why have you remained hidden until now? An excellent question, Navigator. Humanity has been aware of Zetharian expansion for approximately 50 years. We have been observing, learning, and preparing. We remained hidden because we hoped you would choose to limit your expansion to uninhabited systems. Recent intelligence suggests that hope was misplaced. Lieutenant Kira Santos, the human communications officer, added her voice to the conversation. We have been in contact with several species in this sector who were concerned about Zetharian expansion, but lacked the military capability to express their concerns effectively. We are here as their advocates as well as our own representatives. Elder Vex nodded slowly, his weathered features thoughtful. You speak of advocacy and representation. These are not concepts typically associated with military intervention. Are you proposing some form of alliance among smaller species to counter our expansion? Captain Chen's response revealed the true scope of human planning. Elder Nalar, we are proposing something more significant than a simple alliance. Humanity has developed technologies that could benefit all species in this sector. Advanced medical treatments, clean energy systems, faster-than-light communication networks, and defensive technologies that could protect any world from external threats. We are prepared to share these technologies freely with any civilization that commits to peaceful coexistence and mutual respect. The offer struck the War Council like a physical blow. The Zetharians had built their empire on technological superiority, using advanced weapons and systems to maintain their dominance. The idea that another species could offer even more advanced technology, and offer it freely rather than using it for conquest, challenged everything they believed about power and civilization. General Thane leaned back in his chair, his tactical mind working through the implications. You are suggesting that we abandon our expansion plans in exchange for access to your technology. But how do we know your technology is actually superior to our own? How do we know this is not some elaborate deception? Commander Webb answered, with what sounded like professional amusement. General, your entire fleet is currently offline because we needed to ensure we had your undivided attention. Would you like a more comprehensive demonstration of our capabilities? Before Thane could respond, alarms began sounding throughout the chamber. The holographic display showed dozens of new contacts appearing throughout the Zetharian system. Not ships approaching from hyperspace, but vessels that were simply there, as if they had been invisible and chosen to reveal themselves. Admiral Krex's voice was tight with controlled fear. How many ships do you have in our system? Currently, about 200 vessels of various classes. We wanted to ensure we could maintain peaceful dialogue, regardless of how your military leadership chose to respond to our initial contact. The silence that followed was deafening. 200 ships, all apparently invisible until they chose to reveal themselves, positioned throughout the most secure system in the Zetharian Empire. The strategic implications were overwhelming. If humans could deploy fleets anywhere without detection, if they could shut down Zetharian systems at will, then the entire balance of power in the galaxy had shifted in a single moment. Elder Vex spoke into the silence, his voice carrying the wisdom of age and experience. Captain Chen, you have demonstrated capabilities that far exceed our own. You could have demanded our surrender, occupied our worlds, or simply destroyed us from concealment. Instead, you request negotiation and offer beneficial trade. Why? Captain Chen's response revealed the heart of human philosophy that would reshape galactic politics. Elder, humanity learned long ago that true strength comes not from the ability to dominate others, but from the wisdom to lift others up. We have encountered many species in our exploration of the galaxy, and we have found that cooperation produces far better results than conquest. Strong neighbors make for a secure region, and secure regions allow all civilizations to prosper. General. Thane struggled with concepts that challenged his entire worldview. You could take whatever you wanted from us. Why offer trade instead of simply taking resources by force? Because, General, forced submission creates resentment, rebellion, and instability. Willing cooperation creates innovation, mutual support, and lasting peace. We have seen what happens when powerful species choose conquest over cooperation. The results are never sustainable in the long term. Admiral Krex found himself facing a decision that would define not just his career, but the future of his entire species. The humans had demonstrated overwhelming technological superiority, but they were offering partnership instead of demanding surrender. They were proposing to share advanced technologies that could benefit everyone, rather than using those technologies to establish dominance. Captain Chen, Krex said finally, what exactly are you proposing? What would this cooperation look like in practical terms? Admiral, we propose the establishment of a multi-species council to govern expansion activities in this sector. Each civilization would have representation based on population and technological contribution. Expansion into inhabited systems would require unanimous approval from all council members. In exchange, all participating species would have access to shared technologies, mutual defense agreements, and cooperative exploration programs. The proposal was revolutionary. Instead of the traditional system where powerful species dominated weaker ones, the humans were suggesting a truly cooperative approach to galactic civilization. It would mean abandoning the conquest-based expansion that had built the Zetharian Empire, but it would also mean access to technologies and alliances that could benefit every Zetharian citizen. Elder Vex smiled for the first time since the crisis began. Captain, you are proposing to replace competition with cooperation, conquest with collaboration. It is an ambitious vision. It is the only sustainable vision, Elder. Humanity has learned through our own difficult history that civilizations built on cooperation last longer and achieve more than civilizations built on domination. We are offering to help build something better than what has existed before. General Thane looked around the table at his fellow officers, seeing his own thoughts reflected in their faces. The old ways had made them powerful, but the humans were offering something more than power. They were offering a future where strength meant protection rather than conquest, where technology served all people rather than just the strong. Admiral Krex made the decision that would echo through history. Captain Chen, the Zetharian Empire accepts your proposal to establish multi-species cooperation in this sector. We are prepared to halt our current expansion plans and participate in negotiations for this new council. The relief in Captain Chen's voice was unmistakable. Admiral, you have made a choice that will benefit not just your own people but every civilization in this region of space. Humanity looks forward to working with the Zetharian Empire as partners rather than adversaries. As the communication ended and the human ships began restoring power to the Zetharian fleet, Admiral Krex stood at the observation window, watching his vessels come back to life. The Grand Fleet ceremony had become something entirely different than planned. Instead of demonstrating Zetharian military dominance, it had become the first step toward a new kind of strength based on cooperation, wisdom, and mutual respect. Navigator. Zill approached him, his young voice filled with wonder. Admiral, do you think this will really work? Can species that have been competing for centuries learn to cooperate instead? Krex watched as the first Zetharian ships began moving again, their running lights blinking in patterns that now seemed almost celebratory. Zill, I think we are about to find out. And I suspect that human captain is right about one thing. Cooperation may be more difficult than conquest, but the results will be far more rewarding. The age of expansion through conquest was ending, but the age of growth through cooperation was just beginning.